It's rutting season and I just can't get enough of red deer. As the rut is almost over and I've only gotten a few decent shots of these incredible animals this year, I wanted to give it another try and also take this opportunity to travel and photograph with this crazy small wildlife setup. And where to go for a quick red deer photography session? You've read it in the title, we're going to London by plane for only one morning of photography with only this camera. Sounds a little suspicious, right? But as we all know, the greatest shots are created in chaos, and I can tell one thing up front, I was struggling so much to pick the best shots for this video. So let's see what happened. So I got on the plane with only hand luggage. In it, spare underwear, toothbrush, a 100-400 on the Canon R7 and a vlog camera, with which I was able to take the first animal photo with 11mm immediately after arrival. When I was at Tower Bridge, I wished for a pigeon. After what felt like an eternity, the only pigeon in the bridge's area that day appeared and landed right in front of me as if it was asking for a quick photo. Speaking of city animals, I of course came across city squirrels in a park late in the evening. They were so curious that I even had a look in the inside of my lens hood. Isn't that crazy? Of course I also took a few photos of these little friends. And after some good food and a few beers in the Hard Rock Cafe, I went to the hotel as I had to get up very early the next day. When I arrived at Richmond Park the next morning, the weather couldn't be better for rut season photography. Very cold, no rain and a lot of fog that would eventually clear with the sunshine later. And I hadn't been in the park for 30 minutes when I was able to locate the first deer through rutting cries. A very decent stack in the tall ferns between beautiful and very old oaks. A little mist and the first sunlight created a wonderful atmosphere for the first photos. But from the dense fog behind me I could hear even louder rutting. And when I saw a deer of about the same size limping out of the dense fog, I immediately rushed into the fog. And exactly what I expected awaited me in the open field behind a small forest. A really big stag with a herd, in dense fog, in the backlight. Was my plan of a quick and easy stag photo going to work out after 30 minutes? Let's have a look into the shots. After these wonderfully atmospheric photos in the backlight, I started to include the trees that surrounded me. And I think this upright photo is absolutely amazing. So you see, my plan for some nice red deer shots worked out. But it was about to get even crazier. It worked out so good that the wonderful photos you just saw are not even the best. I will show the top 5 photos towards the end of the video, but before that, let's see what happened next. After another 30 minutes, the fog started to lift and the deer started to move. As I really wanted to work with the ferns in the backlight, I positioned myself at the edge of a fern field in the direction where they were moving. The plan not only worked out great, but it turned out to be one of my most amazing red deer encounters I've ever had. The animals came so close to me that I could hear the gnashing of their teeth as they ate the grasses in front of me, and even their breathing. And photographically, I took some of my best red deer shots ever. After experiencing and photographing a funny scene with jackdaws, it was time for a break as the light was getting worse. I'd like to take this break to give a brief review of my gear. As I said, I used the R7 APS-C sensor camera from Canon paired with an incredibly small and lightweight RF 100-400 zoom lens. A small lens naturally means that not much light comes in, just due to its construction. There is just a small hole. However, the aperture of f8 didn't affect me at all. On the contrary, the backgrounds are all beautiful. I mean, I prefer more detail in the backgrounds to show the animal's habitat. I just don't like those animal portraits with completely homogeneous backgrounds that are often seen on social media. For those who do like them, there will soon be photos of an animal that came so close to me during the lunch break that I was almost unavoidable to take these kind of portraits. Also, the lack of light at f8 was not an issue for the mirrorless R7, even in low light conditions. And even with very short shutter speeds and high ISOs, the noise was very manageable. The image quality you can see for yourselves in the photos. The 15 frames per second with the mechanical shutter were very helpful, and the autofocus worked nearly perfect with the right settings. So in combination, this tiny package was one of the best wildlife cameras I've ever used. 640mm through the APS-C sensor, with a size and a weight that is almost unnoticeable. I often thought, okay, I still have a camera in my hand. There is 640mm in my hand, and I've been carrying it around for hours and I don't even feel it. Like, how practical. And that's exactly how it was. I was able to move freely in the field for hours without any restrictions. Through small adjustments in position and perspective, it contributed significantly to the shots that I've got. As a good example, we can take this shot through the ferns, which I wouldn't have done with a bigger lens, where I could not move that freely in the fern as I could with this camera. So am I satisfied? A 100%. If you know how to use this small package, can be top-notch professional gear. The top 5 at the end will, in my opinion, impressively support that. Now back to the break, which wasn't really a break at all, since I was interrupted by some feathered friends at the point where I had settled down. Just as I began my breakfast with an apple, seagulls started circling in front of me, and a great crested grebe joined hunting. As I love grebes, breakfast had to wait, and when it dove underwater, I moved to the water's edge. After the second or third dive, the grebe surfaced right in front of me with its catch, resulting in this photo. And where there are fish, one hunter cannot be missing: the heron. It provided me with this great photo, and later was responsible for the close-ups I just mentioned. It hunted a specific area with a really high success rate, allowing me to wait and photograph the moments with caught fish. But not only I noticed this. A seagull did too, came in and landed between me and the heron, allowing me to include it in the frame. As the heron was still very successful, I managed to get this photo with the gull and the heron's catch. I was already very satisfied when a heron started heading in my direction. Just a few meters in front of me, it stopped, aimed, and caught a fish. As I was prepared for this moment, I also just had to aim and press the button in the right moment. While I took the close-up shots, I was being watched, and soon many photographers came to the same spot to photograph the heron. I made way for them and observed the heron a little bit longer before moving on. After a few meters, I spotted a stag in a clearing from the distance, and in the same area I spotted a second one. They came really close, and then size comparisons of antlers and bodies were accompanied by loud rutting calls. But unfortunately, I didn't reach a suitable spot in time to capture the fight between the two giants. However, I was able to take a nice photo of both the stags along with a starling that just joined them. And later on, I could do this nice shot of one of the stags isolated. In this situation, another photo emerged that would make it to the top 5. A fantastic photo that you'll see in a minute. As the lighting conditions were also challenging here, I started experimenting again. But soon I was distracted by an extreme rutting call and headed straight in that direction. There I found a massive stag. Unfortunately, in even worse light. I still took a photo for documentation because its antlers were the most impressive antlers I had ever seen. I then tried to at least stage it creatively with these two shots. I slowly began to consider giving up, since the lighting was really poor. But when I spotted a herd further away on a hill, I decided to make one last attempt, and I was rewarded. Harsh light from above and a completely shadowed forest edge presented itself, and I immediately knew what to do. The highlight to shadow contrast was already hard, but I intensified it even more by heavily underexposing the shot. The first photo was brilliant right away, but I had a specific image in mind. I wanted an isolated portrait with just contrast and contour, and the stack itself cooperated beautifully. It positioned itself in the only plant-free gap in front of me and started to pose. Now you'll see one of my best shots ever, and the remaining photos from the top 5. With that, I'll say goodbye. If you liked my work, you could help me a lot by leaving a thumbs up, or if you want to see more in the field wildlife content, you can subscribe to my channel. Yes, I know it was a top 6, but I couldn't decide. Bye!